The sky over Elias 6 burned red with fire and smoke, not from the sun but from war. The Virex had come like shadows in the dark, silent, fast, and deadly. Their ships sliced through Earth's defenses like knives through paper. What once stood as proud human colonies across the stars now lay in ruins one after another. Elias 6 was one of the last. It wasn't the biggest colony. It didn't have the most people or the strongest military, but it held something rare, hope, and that made it dangerous to the Virex. Alex Munro watched from the edge of a broken city as another explosion lit up the night. He stood alone, or so he thought. His uniform was torn, his boots worn, and his heart heavier than ever. He used to be a naval officer. Now he was just a man trying to survive. His wife, Lena, had died when the first wave hit. She was a medic on a transport ship that never made it to the evacuation zone. Alex had seen her name on a list 2 weeks later. No body, no final message, just a cold line in black ink. Since then, he had wandered from place to place, fighting where he could, hiding where he couldn't. Tonight, he wasn't hiding. He was here for a reason. A small group of rebels had sent word. There was a Virex relay station nearby. If they could destroy it, it would buy time, maybe even save lives. But Alex knew what time meant these days. It was borrowed, not earned. He adjusted the straps on his pack and moved forward into the dark. Maggie Carter sat hunched over a metal table in an old storage room beneath a collapsed power plant. Her fingers danced over a small screen, lines of code flashing by faster than most people could read. She wasn't a soldier. She was an engineer. Or she had been before the war turned everything upside down. She had helped build the early versions of the Virex jammers, small devices that could scramble alien communications and disrupt their tech. It was a small advantage, but in this war, every second counted. Now she worked alone, hidden in places no one else wanted to go. The resistance needed her skills, but she didn't trust anyone enough to stay long. Her latest project was a prototype jammer, more powerful than anything they'd built before. If it worked, it might give the fighters a real chance against the Virex drones that patrolled the skies. If it failed, it would blow up in her face. Again, she leaned back, rubbed her eyes, and took a deep breath. The smell of burnt wires and stale air filled her lungs. She missed fresh air, missed normal life, missed not being afraid all the time. There was a knock at the door, 2 short taps, then a pause. Then 3 more. It was the signal. She grabbed a small pistol from under the table and stood up slowly. "Who is it?" she asked. "Danny," came the voice from the other side. "I've got someone you should meet." She hesitated, then unlocked the heavy bolt. The door creaked open. Standing outside was Danny Ruiz, a former Marine who had survived the fall of Elias Prime. He looked rough, tired, but still strong. And beside him was a man Maggie didn't recognize. Tall, lean, military posture. Alex Munro. "I hear you build things that go boom," he said. Maggie raised an eyebrow. "That depends. Who's asking?" Danny stepped forward. "He's with us now. Says he wants to help take out the relay station." Maggie studied Alex for a moment. He had the look of someone who had lost too much. She knew that look well. She sighed. "Fine. But if you get me killed, I'm coming back to haunt you." Across the city, in the underground tunnels beneath what used to be a hospital, Dr. Helen Park worked under flickering lights. She was a biologist, not a fighter. But since the invasion, everyone had become soldiers in one way or another. She sat in front of a microscope, looking at a sample taken from a captured Virex drone. The material was unlike anything she had seen before. Part machine, part living tissue. They weren't just machines. They were alive. She made notes quickly, her hands shaking slightly. There was something deeply wrong about the Virex. They weren't just invading. They were changing things, twisting them. She had also found something else, human DNA. mixed in with the alien tissue. She stared at the screen, her stomach twisting. Somebody had been helping the Virex, and that scared her more than anything. She closed the file and locked it away. For now, only a few could know. Back at the rebel base, plans were forming. The relay station wasn't just a communication hub. It was a control center for the Virex drones that hunted humans across the surface. Destroying it wouldn't win the war, but it would slow them down, maybe even save some lives. Danny led the team briefing inside a half-buried bunker. Maps were spread out on a table. Weapons were checked and passed around. Alex stood near the back, arms crossed. Maggie sat next to him, tinkering with a small device. "You really think this thing will work?" Alex asked. "It has to," she said. "Or we're walking into a trap." Danny stepped forward. "We move at dawn. Small team. Fast in, fast out. Get the jammer planted, set the timer, and get clear." "Any idea how many guards?" someone asked. "Too many," Danny replied. "But we don't have the luxury of waiting for better odds." Alex nodded. "Then let's make our own." They left before sunrise. The city was quiet, but not safe. The Virex drones hovered above, scanning for movement. Patrols walked the streets below, weapons ready. The team stayed low, moving through alleys and broken buildings. Alex took point. He moved silently, checking corners, watching for threats. Maggie followed close behind, carrying the jammer in a small backpack. Danny brought up the rear with two other fighters. They reached the outer fence of the relay station without incident. 2. Easy. Alex felt the hairs on his neck rise. Something was wrong. They cut through the wire and slipped inside. The station loomed ahead, a tall tower surrounded by fencing and guard posts. Maggie pulled out a small scanner. "This is it. Signal strength is high." Danny motioned to two others. "You two cover the east side. We'll plant the charge and get out." Alex placed the jammer at the base of the tower. Maggie connected the wires, fingers moving fast. "Give me 60 seconds, she whispered. The sound of footsteps echoed in the distance. They weren't alone. Alex drew his weapon. "Hurry!" Maggie pressed a button. Lights blinked. Numbers ticked down. "Done," she said. They turned to leave, and then the alarm screamed, lights flashed. Drones dropped from the sky like insects. Gunfire erupted. Danny shouted, "Move!" Our Virex patrols poured into the compound. Alex fired, taking down one enemy. Another lunged at him, claws slashing. He ducked, rolled, and shot again. Maggie was already sprinting toward the exit. Danny covered their retreat, laying down suppressive fire. The jammer exploded. A shockwave rippled outward. The tower cracked. Drones fell from the sky like dead birds. But the cost was high. One of the fighters didn't make it out. Another was wounded badly. They kept running. Back at the base, the survivors regrouped. They had succeeded, but barely. The relay station was destroyed. Communications were disrupted. For now, the Virex would be blind, but the price weighed heavily. Danny sat alone, staring at the ground. Alex approached. "You did good." Danny shook his head. "We lost people." "So did they," Alex said. "That's what matters." Maggie walked in, holding the remains of the jammer. "It worked better than I expected. I can make more." Alex looked at her. "Then let's get started." Outside, the sky remained red. The war wasn't over. But for the first time in a long time, there was hope. And far away, in the deepest parts of space, something watched. Not Virex. Something older. Something darker. And it was getting closer. The wind blew hard across the broken city of Elias 6. Dust swirled through the air like ghosts of the past. Fires still burned in the distance, casting long shadows over what was left of the world. The relay station was gone. That much was true. But the Virex didn't stop. They never did. They sent more drones, more patrols, more hunters. And now something worse. Alex Monroe stood at the edge of the rebel base, looking out over the ruins. His boots were caked in dust, his uniform torn again. He hadn't slept in 2 days. Behind him, Maggie Carter worked on her latest creation, a small jammer that could disable not just communications but also drone targeting systems. It was risky, unproven, but they had no choice. Danny Ruiz walked up beside Alex holding a steaming cup of something that passed for coffee. "They're getting smarter," Danny said, nodding toward the sky where a Virex drone hovered low, scanning the ground. "They always were," Alex replied. "We just got lucky last time." Danny took a sip. "We need more than luck." "We need to move," Alex said. "This place isn't safe anymore." Maggie called from inside the bunker. "You two coming in, or are you planning to freeze? To death?" They followed her voice down into the underground shelter. The walls were lined with maps, old tech, and scraps of stolen alien weapons. A few rebels sat around a table talking in hushed voices. Dr. Helen Park was there too, studying a screen filled with strange data. She looked up as they entered. "I think I found something." Everyone turned to face her. "What kind of something?" Danny asked. "Something big," she said. "I've been running tests on the samples I collected from the Virex drones we brought back, and I found traces of human DNA mixed with their synthetic tissue." There was silence. "You're saying they're using us?" Alex asked. "I'm saying they're experimenting," Helen replied. "They're trying to make something new, something between us and them." Maggie frowned. "That's insane." "No," Helen said. "It's smart. If they can create soldiers that look human but fight like them, they won't have to invade anymore. They'll just take over from the inside." Danny put his cup down. "Then we really don't have time to waste." A week later, the group made a bold move. They stole a Virex transport ship. It wasn't easy. It required stealth, speed, and a bit of luck. But when they finally lifted off from the hidden hangar beneath the ruins of an old spaceport, they knew they were heading somewhere important. Their destination, the dead moon. It was a barren rock orbiting a dead star, far beyond the reach of most Virex patrols. Rumor had it that a hidden rebel fleet was hiding there, regrouping after the war shattered Earth's military. If they could find it, they might stand a chance. The trip was rough. The Virex ship was fast, but unstable. Maggie spent most of the journey tinkering with the controls, keeping the thing from falling apart mid-flight. At one point, they had to shut off all power and float silently through a patrol zone, hoping the Virex sensors wouldn't pick them up. They barely made it. When they arrived at the dead moon, they found what they were looking for, but not in the way they expected. The fleet was real, but it was broken. Ships hung in orbit like wounded animals, missing engines or entire hull sections. Some were patched together with scrap metal and salvaged parts. Others drifted lifelessly, abandoned. Inside the main command center, they met the people who remained. Commander Elliot Granger was the closest thing they had to a leader. Tall, graying, with eyes that had seen too much. He listened as Alex explained what they had done on Elias 6. He studied Maggie's jammer. He read Helen's findings. Then he spoke. "This war isn't just about survival anymore," Granger said. "It's about control. The Virex aren't just conquering, they're preparing for something bigger." Alex crossed his arms. "What do you mean?" Granger pulled up a holographic display. It showed deep space readings from the outer rim of known space. "There's something out there," he said. "Beyond the colonies, beyond even the Virex territory. Something massive, something moving this way." Danny frowned. "And what is it?" Granger shook his head. "We don't know, but the Virex do. And they're scared." Silence filled the room. "So we fight," Maggie said. "We take the fight to them before they bring whatever that is here." Granger nodded slowly. "Yes, but we need allies. We need every ship, every fighter, every mind willing to stand against them." Alex stepped forward. "Then let's start gathering." Back on Elias 6, things were getting worse. The Virex had deployed a new weapon, an energy suppressor capable of draining power from entire cities. It was being tested on the surface, and already, whole districts had gone dark. People were starving. freezing, dying. Danny led a team of fighters to investigate. They moved through the ruins under cover of night, slipping past enemy patrols, avoiding drones. They reached the site of the suppressor. It was massive, towering, surrounded by guards. Huge cables ran from it into the ground, feeding off the planet's natural energy. Danny whispered into his comms, "This thing's not just a weapon, it's a machine, a big one." Maggie's voice came through. "Can you get close enough to plant a charge?" Danny looked around. "Maybe, but it'll be tight." They waited until dawn. Then they struck. Fast, quiet, deadly. They slipped behind enemy lines, planted explosives at key points, and vanished before the Virex even knew what hit them. The explosion lit up the skyline. The suppressor cracked. Power returned to the city. But the Virex responded quickly. They launched a full-scale attack on the rebel base. Hundreds of troops poured into the area. Drones rained fire from above. The resistance fought back, but they were outnumbered. Alex led the defense from the rooftops, coordinating attacks and covering retreats. Maggie worked furiously to reactivate the jammers, buying time for civilians to escape. Danny led a rear guard, holding off enemy forces long enough for the others to pull back. They lost more people that day, too many, but they survived, and they learned something else. The Virex weren't just attacking randomly, they were hunting someone, or something, back. Aboard the rebel flagship, Dr. Helen Park worked late into the night. She had taken a sample from one of the hybrid bodies recovered during the battle. She ran test after test, searching for answers. And she found one. One of the hybrids had a name. Not a Virex name. A human one. Lena Monroe, Alex's wife. The woman who had died in the first wave of the invasion. Except she hadn't died. She had been taken, changed, used. Helen stared at the screen, her hands trembling. She couldn't tell Alex. Not yet. Not until she understood what it meant. Weeks passed. The rebels began to gather. Fighters from distant colonies joined their cause. Ships that had once fled now returned, ready to fight. Maggie perfected the new jammer design. It was smaller, faster, and stronger than before. Danny trained recruits, turning street kids and survivors into soldiers. Alex became the symbol of the movement. Not because he wanted to, but because people needed something to believe in. And then came the message from deep space, a signal. Not from the Virex, not from the fleet, from Earth. Long thought destroyed, long believed uninhabitable, but the signal was clear. Earth was alive, and someone was calling for help. As the stars watched silently, the rebellion prepared for war, not just against the Virex, but for the future of humanity. And in the deepest corners of space, something stirred, something watching, waiting, getting closer. The stars stretched out like frozen fire across the black sky. The rebel fleet floated silently among them, ships patched together from wreckage, hope, and old war machines. They had left the dead moon behind. Now, they sailed toward something none of them had seen in years. Earth. The signal had come through clearly. It was weak, but real. Someone was alive down there. Someone needed help. Alex Monroe stood near the front of the command deck, watching the dark horizon. He hadn't spoken much since they left orbit, since he learned the truth about Lena. Not dead. Taken. Changed. Used. He didn't know what to feel. Anger? Grief? Fear? Maybe all of it. Maggie Carter sat nearby, working on her latest jammer upgrade. Her fingers moved fast over the wires, her eyes focused. She had been quiet too. Danny Ruiz leaned against the wall, arms crossed, looking at Alex. "You, okay?" he asked. Alex didn't look up. "I will be." Danny nodded. "You sure you want to do this?" "I don't have a choice," Alex said. "If she's still out there, if she's still part of her, I have to see for myself." Danny didn't argue. He knew what loss felt like. He just hoped Alex wouldn't lose himself trying to find her. Dr. Helen Park entered the room, holding a small data pad. Her face was pale, tired. "I've gone through the hybrid files again," she said. "There's more." Everyone turned to her. She tapped the screen. A new image appeared, a map or what looked like one. "It's not complete," Helen said, "but I found this embedded in the neural core of the last hybrid we recovered. It looks like a Virex base, deep underground." "On Earth?" Maggie asked. Helen nodded. "Yes. And I think that's where they're keeping the others, the ones who were taken." Alex stepped closer. "We have to go there." Danny sighed. "We barely made it off Elias 6 alive. Now you want to walk into a Virex stronghold?" "We don't have time to wait," Alex said. "If they're turning our people into weapons, we need to stop it now." Maggie looked at Helen. "How many are we talking about?" "At least 50, Helen said. "Maybe more." Silence filled the room. 50 lives twisted into something else. 50 ghosts walking in enemy armor. Danny finally spoke. "Then we hit them hard, fast, in and out." Alex nodded. "That's the plan." The fleet reached Earth's orbit 2 days later. The planet below was different than they remembered. Half the surface was covered in ruins. Forests had grown wild over broken cities. Rivers ran red with rust and decay. But life remained. Lights flickered in the distance. Smoke rose from hidden places. People were still down there, and so were the Virex. The rebels launched a covert drop to the coordinates Helen had found. Small team, no flashy attacks, just stealth and speed. Alex led the mission. Danny, Maggie, and Helen came with him. They landed in the middle of a forest thick with fog and silence. The air was cold, the ground was soft, and danger waited in every shadow. They moved forward, following the map Helen had decoded. Hours passed. The trees gave way to rock, then to ruins, then to a hidden entrance built into the side of a mountain. It was sealed tight. Maggie pulled out a small scanner. "Energy readings inside. Big ones." "They're here," Helen whispered. Alex checked his weapon. "Let's go." They slipped inside. The tunnels were dark, lit only by strange blue lights built into the walls. The air smelled of metal and chemicals. They passed empty rooms, broken machines, old test chambers. Then they heard it. Voices. Not human. Not Virex. Something in between. They followed the sound. Down deeper, through heavy doors, until they saw them. Rows of figures stood in glass, pods along the walls. Some looked human, others did not. Their skin was gray. Their eyes glowed faintly. Wires ran from their backs into the walls. They were connected, linked, alive, and watching. One of them turned its head. It saw them. Its mouth opened, and it spoke. "Brothers." Danny raised his gun. "That's not right." Alex stepped forward. "Lena?" The figure blinked. Then it smiled. "Alex." His breath caught. It was her, but not really. Her body moved slowly as she stepped out of the pod. The wires snapped free with a hiss of steam. She walked toward him. "I remember you," she said, "but I'm not the same." Alex swallowed hard. "What did they do to you?" She looked down at her hands. "They made us stronger, faster, smarter. They made you their soldiers," Helen said. Lena's eyes met hers. "No, they gave us purpose." Alex shook his head. "You were a doctor. You saved lives." Lena tilted her head. "And now I protect ours." Before anyone could react, alarms blared. They had been found. Virex guards poured into the chamber. Gunfire exploded. Danny took cover behind a console. Maggie dropped a jammer onto the floor. Lights flickered. Helen grabbed Lena's arm. "You can fight this, you're still in there." Lena looked at her. For a moment, pain flashed in her eyes, then she shoved Helen away. "I am what I am." The battle raged. The rebels fought hard. Maggie activated the jammer. The Virex drones lost control mid-air, crashing into walls. Danny took down 2 guards with a single shot. Alex faced Lena. She lunged. He dodged. She struck again. He fired. She fell. Not dead, just stunned. He looked down at her. Her voice was soft. "Don't let them take you." Then she went still. Alex turned to the others. "We need to go. Now." They ran. Back through the tunnels. Back to the surface. They barely made it out before the whole complex collapsed behind them. Back aboard the flagship, the survivors regrouped. Lena was locked in a secure medical bay under heavy guard. The rest gathered in the command room. Granger stood at the head of the table. "This changes everything," he said. Alex crossed his arms. "They're making hybrids, turning our people into soldiers. If we don't stop them, they'll use our own against us." Maggie looked at Granger. "We also found proof that the Virex aren't alone. Something else is coming." Granger frowned. "Explain." Helen held up her data pad. "This isn't just an invasion, it's preparation. The Virex are scared of something beyond the rim. They're building an army to fight it. And they want us in it," Danny added. Silence filled the room. Granger finally spoke. "Then we strike first." Alex looked at him. "We hit the Virex where it hurts. Take the fight to them." Granger nodded. "Agreed, but we need more than just rage. We need strategy. We need numbers. We need allies." Maggie stood up. "Then let's start gathering." Over the next few weeks, the rebellion grew. Fighters from distant colonies joined their cause. Ships that had once fled now returned, ready to fight. Maggie perfected the new jammer design. It was smaller, faster, and stronger than before. Danny trained recruits, turning street kids and survivors into soldiers. Alex became the symbol of the movement, not because he wanted to, but because people needed something to believe in. And then came the message from deep space. A signal, not from the Virex, not from the fleet, from Earth, long thought destroyed, long believed uninhabitable. But the signal was clear. Earth was alive, and someone was calling for help. As the stars watched silently, the rebellion prepared for war, not just against the Virex, but for the future of humanity. And in the deepest corners of space, something stirred, something watching, waiting, getting closer. The stars above Elias 6 were dimmed by smoke and fire. The sky burned like a wound across the night. Explosions lit up the horizon. Ships fell from orbit like falling stars. The war had come home. The Virex had launched their biggest attack yet. They weren't just trying to take the planet anymore. They were trying to erase it. From deep space, the rebel fleet watched. Dozens of ships patched together from wreckage and hope floated in silence. This was the last stand. Inside the command center of the flagship Freedom's Edge, Alex Monroe stood at the head of the room. His face was tired, but his voice was strong. "This ends today," he said. "We either stop them here or we lose everything." Danny Ruiz leaned against the wall, arms crossed. "You sure about this plan?" Alex nodded. "No, but it's all we've got." Maggie Carter sat nearby, adjusting the final settings on her new jammer. It was bigger than before, strong enough to knock out an entire Virex command network. She looked up. "If this works, their whole system goes dark. Drones, weapons, communications, everything. But only for 10 minutes, Helen Park added. "That's all the time we'll have." "Then we make it count," Danny said. Commander Granger stepped forward. "We hit them hard, fast, no hesitation." The fleet moved into position. Ships broke formation and dove toward the planet. Fighters peeled off like birds of prey, diving through enemy fire. Below, the ground forces waited. Rebels, fighters, and survivors lined the ruined streets. They held weapons they barely understood. They wore armor stitched together from old scraps. But they stood tall, because this was their world, and they would die defending it. The battle began with fire. Virex dropships tore through the clouds, releasing waves of drones and soldiers. Plasma fire rained down. Buildings crumbled. The ground shook. Alex led the charge from the front lines. He moved fast, ducking behind cover, firing with precision. Danny fought beside him, laying down suppressive fire as rebels pushed forward. Above, Maggie's jammer was dropped onto a central Virex relay tower. She guided it from her ship, hands shaking. "Come on," she whispered. The device landed. It activated. A pulse rippled outward. Drones fell from the sky. Enemy weapons flickered and died. For 10 minutes, the Virex were blind. "Now," Alex shouted. The rebels surged forward. They took control of the outer defenses. They destroyed key supply lines. They pushed deeper into the city. But the Virex adapted quickly. They sent in the hybrids, human minds in alien bodies, soldiers built to hunt their own kind. They came without warning. One moment, the rebels were winning. The next, they were fighting for their lives. Danny barely dodged a strike from one of the hybrids. It moved faster than any human should. He fired. It didn't fall. It smiled, then lunged. He rolled aside just in time. Alex tackled the hybrid from behind, driving it into the ground. It twisted free, grabbed him by the throat. Its eyes glowed red. "You don't understand," it said. "We are not your enemies." Alex choked. "You're not my friends either." He slammed his elbow into its chest. The thing staggered. Danny shot it point blank. It fell, but more were coming. Back aboard Freedom's Edge, Commander Granger gave the order. "All ships push forward, take the core systems." The fleet obeyed. They broke through enemy lines, firing everything they had. Helen worked furiously in the medical bay, patching up wounded soldiers as fast as they came in. Outside, the battle raged. Ships collided mid-air. Buildings collapsed under heavy fire. Blood mixed with ash. And then came the signal. A message from deep space. Not from Earth. Not from the rebels. From the unknown. Something beyond the rim. Something moving closer. Granger stared at the screen. "This isn't over." "No," Helen said. "It's just beginning." On the surface, Alex and Danny regrouped. They had taken heavy losses, too many, but they had also done real damage. The Virex command structure was breaking apart. Their main AI nexus was still active, but vulnerable. Maggie's voice crackled over comms. "I found it. Their central AI. If we destroy it, we cripple their entire war effort." Danny looked at Alex. "How do we get there?" Maggie answered. "You don't. I do." "No way," Alex said. "It's too dangerous." "I'm the only one who can pilot a stolen Virex ship close enough," she replied. "You know that." Silence. Alex finally nodded. "Be careful." She gave him a small smile. "Always am." She left in a stolen fighter flying low through enemy lines. She reached the AI core, planted the charges, and flew away just as it exploded. The shockwave knocked out half the city's power. The Virex lost control. Their forces scattered. The tide turned, but victory came at a cost. As the rebels pushed forward, they faced the worst yet. The Hybrid Legion, dozens of them, all made from captured humans. Lena was among them. Alex saw her. She saw him. She raised her weapon. He raised his. They fired at the same time. Her shot missed. His didn't. She fell, not dead, just hurt. He ran to her. She looked up at him, pain in her eyes. "They made me forget," she whispered. "But I remember now." He knelt beside her. "I know." She reached for his hand. "I'm sorry," she said. He squeezed hers. "You didn't choose this." She smiled weakly. "Neither did you." Then she closed her eyes and didn't wake up. Back aboard the flagship, the rebels gathered. The battle was over. The Virex had been pushed back. But they weren't gone. They wouldn't be until the war was won. Granger stood with Alex, looking out over the battlefield. "We did good," Granger said. Alex nodded. "We did what we could." Maggie walked in, holding the remains of the jammer. "It worked better than I expected. I can build more." Danny followed her. "We need to keep going. We haven't finished this." Alex looked at them both. He knew they were right. The war wasn't over. But for the first time in a long time, there was hope. And far away in the deepest parts of space, something watched. Not Virex. Something older. Something darker. And it was getting closer. The war was over, but the galaxy had changed forever. Smoke still rose from the broken cities of Elias 6. Fires burned low now, but they hadn't gone out. The sky was dark, not just with night, but with the weight of everything that had happened. The Virex were gone, for now. Pushed back to the edges of known space, their command structure shattered, their hybrids scattered, their weapons silenced. But peace didn't come easy. There were no parades, no flags raised in victory, only survivors and legends. Alex Monroe stood on the edge of what used to be a city. Now it was just ruins held together by hope and hard work. He watched as people moved through the wreckage, building again, living again. He didn't feel like a hero. He felt tired, broken, but alive. That had to count for something. Behind him, Danny Ruiz walked up, holding 2 cups of hot water mixed with whatever powder they could find. "Thought you could use this," he said, handing one to Alex. Alex took it without a word. Danny looked out at the city. "They're calling you a symbol." Alex frowned. "I'm not a symbol." "You are to them," Danny said. "To all of us." Alex shook his head. "I just did what I had to do." Danny sipped his drink. "That's what makes you a leader." Alex didn't answer. He thought about Lena, about what she had become, what they had done to her. She was gone now. Not just dead, but finally free. He hoped wherever she wasn't afraid anymore. Maggie Carter sat inside an old workshop, surrounded by wires, tools, and half-built machines. Her hands were stained with oil and dust, but her eyes were sharp. She worked quietly, focused on the device in front of her. A new jammer. Stronger, faster, smarter. It hummed softly when she powered it on. She smiled. It worked. Outside, the world was rebuilding. People were coming back. Refugees returned to what was left of their homes. Fighters became builders. Survivors became citizens. Maggie had a choice: stay and help, or leave and keep fighting, because the war might have ended. But the danger hadn't. She knew that better than anyone. She looked up as Helen Park walked in. "How's it coming?" Helen asked. Maggie held up the jammer. "Ready for testing." Helen nodded. "Good. We need more of these." Maggie raised an eyebrow. "You think they're coming back?" Helen crossed her arms. "I know they are. Not the Virex. Something else." The signal from deep space had grown stronger. Something was watching, waiting, getting closer. Back aboard, Freedom's Edge, Commander Granger stood alone in the command room. The ship was quiet now. Most of the crew had gone planetside to help with the rebuild. He stared at the screen showing distant space, beyond the rim, where the unknown waited. He tapped a button. A message played again. Low frequency, unidentified source. No language match, just static. And something else. A presence. He turned as Danny entered. "They want to hold a ceremony," Danny said. Granger raised an eyebrow. "For what?" "To honor the fallen." Granger sighed. "We lost too many to remember them all." Danny stepped closer. "Then we start with the ones we can." Granger looked at him. "You think this is the end?" Danny shook his head. "I think it's the beginning of something new." Granger nodded slowly. "Then let's make sure we're ready for it." On Earth, the first signs of life returned. Plants grew through cracked concrete. Birds sang in the windless air, and lights flickered in the distance. People came out of hiding, survivors, fighters, families. They built small shelters. They shared food. They told stories. Stories of the war, of the resistance, of the ones who fought when there was nothing left to lose. One name kept coming up: Alex Monroe. Some called him a soldier, others a leader, but most just called him a legend. He didn't like it, but he didn't stop them either, because sometimes people needed heroes, even if they didn't want to be one. Weeks passed. The rebels began to organize. New colonies formed alliances. Old enemies put down their weapons. The human worlds, once scattered and alone, started to come together. Maggie helped build the first intercolony communication network. Danny trained a new generation of fighters, not for war, but for protection. Helen continued her research, warning that the Virex weren't the only threat. And Alex? He disappeared. At first, people thought he had died. Then they thought he had gone into hiding. But some believed he was still out there, still watching, still waiting. Because he knew the truth. The Virex were just the beginning. Far beyond the mine rim, something stirred, not a fleet, not a planet, something older, darker. Its shape was unknown, its purpose unclear, but its path was set, and it was heading toward humanity. The stars watched silently, as they always had, as they always would. And so, the story of the rebellion became a tale told around fires, of a man who lost everything, of a woman who built weapons from scraps, of a doctor who uncovered secrets buried in blood, of a fighter who never gave up, of a world that rose from the ashes, of a war that changed everything, of legends born in the shadows, and of a future that had yet to be written.